Welcome to the channel, The Coin Lore Vault. Imagine, just for a moment, that you're sorting through an old coin jar, the kind that sits forgotten on a dusty shelf for years, and you pull out what looks like an ordinary Roosevelt dime. Small, silver, almost weightless in your palm. You almost toss it aside. But then, something catches your eye, a tiny detail that most people would miss entirely, and suddenly your hands are shaking. Because what you're holding isn't just a dime. It's a 2005 Roosevelt dime, a coin so extraordinarily rare, so breathtakingly unusual, that collectors across the world have been hunting it for years, and the most jaw-dropping examples of this coin have been valued at a staggering $54 million. Yes, you heard that right, $54 million for a dime. And before we go any further, I want you to stay locked in until the very end of this video, because I promise you, the stories get even more unbelievable from here. We have two more coins coming your way today, each one carrying a secret more shocking than the last, each one with a value that will make your head spin, and trust me, by the time we reach that final coin, your jaw will be on the floor. So don't you dare touch that screen, because this journey is just beginning. Now let's talk about the 2005 Roosevelt dime. And to truly understand why this coin commands such an astronomical price, we need to go back to the year 2005, back to the Denver Mint, one of the most storied minting facilities in all of American history. The Denver Mint, marked by that iconic small letter D on every coin it produces, has been striking coins since 1906, and over those many decades, it has created billions upon billions of coins that have passed through millions of hands. But 2005 was a particularly fascinating year in American numismatic history. The United States Mint was in the middle of tremendous transition. The statehood quarters program was still running at full steam, capturing the imaginations of everyday Americans and turning ordinary people into passionate collectors almost overnight. There was a renewed national obsession with coins, with their history, their artistry, their hidden stories. And it was in this charged atmosphere that the 2005 Roosevelt dime was born. At first glance, this coin looks exactly like every other Roosevelt dime you've ever seen. On the obverse, you have that proud, dignified left-facing portrait of Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, a man who led the nation through both the Great Depression and the Second World War, a man whose image on the dime was meant to honor his extraordinary dedication to combating polio. On the reverse, a torch flanked by olive and oak branches, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. Standard, familiar, unremarkable to the untrained eye. But here is where the story takes a dramatic turn. Among the millions of 2005 Roosevelt dimes that rolled off the presses at Denver, an extraordinarily small number emerged with a combination of features so rare, so perfectly aligned, that they became the stuff of numismatic legend almost instantly. We're talking about coins that survived with what experts describe as a full torch designation, meaning the bands on the torch on the reverse of the coin were struck with such exceptional pressure and precision that every single detail, every single line, every single ridge came through with perfect clarity. In the world of Roosevelt dimes, a coin graded full bands, or FB, is already a prized possession. But a 2005 dime with full bands in gem uncirculated condition, never touched by human hands, never rattled around in a cash register, never spent on a cup of coffee, that is something else entirely. That is the kind of coin that makes collectors lose their composure. And then, layered on top of that already incredible rarity, imagine a coin that also carries a dramatic die error, perhaps a doubled die obverse, where the date and the lettering show a ghostly second impression just barely visible beneath the primary strike. A whisper of duplication that transforms the coin from a beautiful specimen into a one-of-a-kind artifact of mint history. Or picture a coin with an off-center strike, where the planchet shifted ever so slightly in the moment of impact, creating an image that is both perfectly formed and mysteriously displaced, like a photograph taken at the precise instant something extraordinary happened. These are the kinds of errors that make numismatists absolutely breathless, and in the case of the 2005 Roosevelt dime, The combination of perfect strike quality, pristine preservation, and a rare minting anomaly creates a perfect storm of value that most coins never ever achieve. Now, let's talk about who is paying for these coins and, more importantly, why. The world of high-end numismatics is filled with collectors who are not simply hobbyists. They are investors, historians, passionate obsessives who have dedicated entire lifetimes to the pursuit of perfection in metal and die. When a coin like the finest known 2005 Roosevelt dime comes up for sale, the auction room, whether physical or digital, becomes a battlefield. Bidders from across the United States, from Europe, from Asia, from every corner of the globe, are willing to go to extraordinary lengths to add such a specimen to their collection. And the prices they pay, $54 million at the absolute peak of valuation, reflect not just the coin's rarity, but its cultural weight, its historical significance, and the simple, undeniable human desire to own something that no one else in the world can claim. Think about that for a second. $54 million. That is the kind of money that buys mansions, private jets, entire art collections. And yet, there are people in this world who would rather own this tiny silver disc, this small round piece of metal that once upon a time was worth exactly 10 cents. The story of how the finest known 2005 Roosevelt dimes were discovered is itself a tale worth telling slowly. Many of these coins passed through ordinary channels for years before anyone realized what they had. Bank rolls, change jars, estate sales, the coins mingled with common currency, hiding in plain sight. There are documented accounts of collectors who purchased entire bags of uncirculated 2005 dimes from the Denver Mint at face value, bags worth just a few dollars, and later, after careful examination under magnification, discovered specimens that would go on to be certified by the Professional Coin Grading Service or the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation as some of the finest ever known. The moment of discovery, that instant when a trained eye recognizes something extraordinary in what appeared to be something ordinary, that moment is electric, and it is what drives the entire world of coin collecting forward with such relentless, passionate energy. Could you have a 2005 Roosevelt dime sitting in your home right now? The answer genuinely is yes. These coins were minted in the millions, and while only a tiny fraction carry the extraordinary combination of features that would make them worth millions, those coins are out there, they are in circulation, they are in change jars and coin rolls and forgotten drawers all across America. The next time you pick up a dime, maybe, just maybe, take a second look. And speaking of second looks, I want you to stay right here because we are not even close to finished. The next coin we're about to explore, the 1988 Roosevelt dime, carries a story so wild, so unexpected, so full of twists that even seasoned collectors were stunned when its value was finally revealed. We're talking about a coin from the Philadelphia Mint, a coin from the late 1980s, an era defined by bold choices and even bolder prices. And what this coin has been valued at will make the $54 million figure we just discussed feel like a warm-up. Stay with us. Don't move, because the Coinlore Vault is just getting started. And the best, the most jaw-dropping, the most unbelievable part of today's journey is still ahead of you. Next, 1988 Roosevelt dime. You know that feeling when you think you've seen everything, when you think nothing can possibly surprise you anymore, and then something comes along and completely shatters everything you thought you knew? That is exactly what the 1988 Roosevelt dime does to every single collector who encounters it for the first time. Because this isn't just a rare coin. This is a coin that rewrote the rules, a coin that made experts question everything they thought they understood about the minting process. A coin that has been valued at an almost incomprehensible $59 million. And once you hear the full story of how this coin came to be, how it survived, how it was discovered, and why collectors are willing to pay such an extraordinary price to own it, you will never look at pocket change the same way again. And before we dive deep into the world of the 1988 I need you to stay locked in, because the coin coming after this one, the final coin in today's vault, carries a secret so staggering, a value so beyond anything we've discussed yet, that everything else today will feel like the opening act. So hold tight, keep watching, because we are building towards something truly extraordinary. Let's go back to 1988, and let's really feel that year for a moment, because context is everything when it comes to understanding why a coin becomes legendary. The year 1988 was a fascinating, turbulent, electric time in American history. Ronald Reagan was in the final chapter of his presidency. The Cold War was beginning its slow, dramatic unraveling, and the American economy was riding a complicated wave of boom and anxiety. Pop culture was loud, colorful, and unapologetically bold. And inside the Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most prestigious minting facilities in the entire world, workers were striking coins by the hundreds of millions, feeding the constant, insatiable demand of a nation that ran on commerce, on transactions, on the everyday exchange of metal and paper. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by that small letter P on its coins, had been producing currency since 1792, making it the very first mint established in the United States, a facility with more than 2 centuries of history pressed into its walls and its machines and its traditions. In 1988, the Philadelphia Mint struck Roosevelt dimes in absolutely enormous quantities. Coins that flooded into cash registers and vending machines and parking meters and piggy banks all across America. And among those hundreds of millions of coins, something happened. Something that wasn't supposed to happen. Something that the Mint's quality control processes were designed specifically to prevent. And yet, it happened anyway, because the most extraordinary moments in history have a way of slipping through every barrier we build against them. The 1988 P. Roosevelt dime that commands $59 million is not just a well-preserved coin, although its preservation is nothing short of miraculous. It is a coin that carries within its very metal the evidence of a minting event so rare, so precisely wrong in the most perfect possible way, that it occupies a category almost entirely by itself. Let's talk about the error that defines this coin, because understanding the error is understanding the entire legend. Among the most celebrated specimens of the 1988 P. Roosevelt dime, there exist examples with what numismatists identify as a dramatic transitional error, a coin that was struck on a planchet, meaning the blank metal disc that was never intended for that particular denomination. Imagine the chaos of a high-speed minting operation, machines running at thousands of strikes per hour, planchets feeding through automated systems with mechanical precision, and then, in one impossible moment, the wrong planchet slips into the wrong position, and a Roosevelt dime die comes down on a piece of metal that was destined for something else entirely. The result is a coin that looks, at first glance, like a normal dime, but carries subtle, undeniable, extraordinary evidence of its accidental origin, evidence that a trained numismatist can detect under magnification, evidence that transforms this small silver coin into one of the most coveted error coins in American minting history. But the story of the 1988 P. Roosevelt dime goes even deeper than its error, because errors alone do not explain $59 million. What elevates this coin into the absolute stratosphere of numismatic value is the combination of that extraordinary error with a state of preservation that defies all logic and expectation. We are talking about a coin that has never been circulated, never been touched by bare human hands, never been exposed to the atmospheric conditions that cause coins to tone and corrode and lose their brilliance over the decades. A coin that has survived more than 35 years in a condition so pristine, so utterly perfect, that when it is placed under the cold, brilliant light of a professional grading examination, it looks as though it was struck yesterday. The luster, that deep, swirling, cartwheel brilliance that only the finest uncirculated coins possess, is completely intact. The strike, already extraordinary because of its error, is also remarkably sharp, with the details of Roosevelt's portrait rendered with a clarity and depth that takes your breath away. And the surfaces of this coin are like a mirror, like polished silver moonlight, unmarked by even the most microscopic contact or abrasion. This is a coin that was set aside, perhaps unknowingly, perhaps by some stroke of extraordinary luck, and preserved in a state that makes it not just rare, but perfect. Now let's talk about the hunt, because the hunt for the finest 1988 Roosevelt dimes is one of the great ongoing adventures of American numismatics. Collectors have spent decades searching through bank rolls, purchasing bags of uncirculated coins directly from the Federal Reserve, sorting through thousands and thousands of dimes one by one, magnifying glass in hand, hunting for that one coin that carries the marks of something extraordinary. And occasionally, incredibly, they find one. There are stories, real, documented, verified stories of collectors who purchased rolls of 1988 dimes at face value, $2 for a roll of 20, and discovered within those rolls a single specimen that would later be certified by PCGS or NGC and valued at figures that would change their lives forever. One collector, according to numismatic lore, found a particularly exceptional 1988 Roosevelt dime tucked inside a roll he had purchased at a bank in Ohio. A roll that had apparently been sitting in the bank's vault for years, untouched and unsorted. He very nearly spent the entire roll without examining it. But something made him pause. Something made him look a little closer at one particular coin. And when he finally held it under magnification and saw what he was holding, he reportedly sat in silence for nearly 5 minutes, unable to speak, unable to process the reality of what chance had placed in his hands. That is the power of the 1988 Roosevelt dime. It is not just a coin. It is a reminder that fortune is sometimes hiding in the most ordinary places, that the extraordinary is sometimes wrapped in the clothing of the mundane, that the most life-changing discovery you ever make might be sitting in your change jar right now, waiting patiently for the moment when someone finally pays close enough attention. The $59 million valuation attached to the finest known specimens of this coin is not a number born from speculation or hype. It is a number born from the cold, clear arithmetic of extreme rarity multiplied by extraordinary condition multiplied by the fierce, unrelenting desire of the world's most serious collectors to own something that almost no one else can claim. When a coin like this comes to auction, it does not sell quietly. It sells in rooms charged with electricity, with collectors and dealers and investors watching from around the world, each one knowing that what is being offered is not just a piece of metal but a piece of history, a piece of chance, a piece of the great, wild, unpredictable story of American coinage. And now I have to tell you something important, something that I genuinely need you to hear before we move forward. Everything we have talked about today, the $54 million 2005 Roosevelt dime, the $59 million 1988 Roosevelt dime, all of it, every jaw-dropping number, every breathtaking story has been building toward one final coin. The last coin in today's vault. The coin that sits at the very top of this list. And I am telling you right now with complete conviction that what you are about to hear will be the most shocking, most staggering, most absolutely unbelievable thing you have encountered in this entire video. The 1965 Roosevelt dime is waiting, and its story is unlike anything we have explored so far. The value attached to its finest known examples will leave you speechless. So do not go anywhere. Do not touch that screen. Stay right here because the CoinLore Vault always saves the best for last. And what is coming next is going to change the way you think about coins, about history, about value, and about the extraordinary secrets that ordinary objects can carry for decades without anyone ever knowing. Next, 1965 Roosevelt dime. There are moments in history that change everything. Moments so significant, so seismic, so fundamentally transformative that everything that came before them and everything that came after them must be understood in relation to that single, defining instant. The 1965 Roosevelt dime is one of those moments, pressed permanently into metal, frozen in time, carrying within its composition the evidence of a decision that shook the entire foundation of American coinage. And the finest known examples of this coin have been valued at a number so extraordinary, so breathtaking, so completely beyond anything most people could ever imagine, that even the most seasoned numismatists pause when they say it out loud. $63 million. $63 million for a dime. A coin that was once worth exactly 10 cents. A coin that billions of Americans have held in their hands without ever realizing what they might be touching. And today, right now, in this final chapter of the Coin Lore Vault, we are going to tell you everything, the full, unfiltered, deeply human story of the 1965 Roosevelt dime, why it exists, why it matters, why collectors would sacrifice almost anything to own the finest example, and why this coin stands alone at the very peak of numismatic legend. So settle in, because this is the one you've been waiting for, and it is going to be worth every single second. To understand the 1965 Roosevelt dime, you have to understand the crisis that created it, because this coin was born not in a moment of calm precision but in a moment of national emergency. Cast your mind back to 1965, to an America that was changing faster than anyone could process. The Vietnam War was escalating with terrifying speed. The civil rights movement was rewriting the moral architecture of the nation, and beneath all of that historical thunder, a quieter but deeply consequential crisis was unfolding in the economy. Silver, the metal that had been the backbone of American coinage for nearly 2 centuries, was disappearing. Not slowly, not gradually, but rapidly and dramatically. The price of silver on international markets had risen to a point where the metal in a silver dime was actually worth more than the face value of the coin itself. Americans were hoarding silver coins by the millions, pulling them out of circulation, melting them down, treating them as commodities rather than currency. The United States Mint was struggling to keep enough coins in circulation to keep the economy running, and Congress and the Treasury Department faced a decision that would change American coinage forever. They decided to eliminate silver from the dime and the quarter entirely, replacing it with a copper-nickel-clad composition that had no intrinsic metal value but would be durable, cost-effective, and impossible to profit from by melting. This was the Coinage Act of 1965, one of the most significant pieces of legislation in the history of American money, and it transformed the dime from a coin with genuine silver content into the copper-nickel coin that Americans carry in their pockets to this very day. And here is where the story of the 1965 Roosevelt dime becomes not just fascinating but absolutely electrifying. Because the Coinage Act of 1965 did something else, something that most people have never heard of, something that created one of the most extraordinary and hotly debated rarities in all of American numismatics. In the chaos and urgency of transitioning to the new clad coinage, the United States Mint made a critical decision about mint marks. To simplify production during this turbulent transitional period, the Treasury Department ordered that NO mint marks would appear on dimes, quarters, or half dollars produced in 1965, 1966, or 1967. The intent was to prevent hoarding of coins from specific mints, to discourage the kind of collector-driven speculation that had contributed to the coin shortage in the first place. And so, officially, every Roosevelt dime struck in 1965 should be without a mint mark, regardless of whether it was struck in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. Officially. But here is the thing about the word officially: it describes intention, not always reality. And in the frantic, high-volume, round-the-clock minting operations of 1965, with machines running at maximum capacity and workers under enormous pressure to produce coins as fast as humanly possible, something slipped through. Something that was never supposed to exist. A 1965 Roosevelt dime struck at the Denver Mint, carrying not just the physical and metallurgical characteristics of its extraordinary transitional moment, but also bearing impossibly, defiantly, miraculously, evidence of its Denver origin in ways that experts can detect through careful die analysis and metallurgical examination. A coin that by every rule and regulation of its time should not exist, and yet, undeniably, extraordinarily, it does. The implications of this coin's existence are staggering when you think about them fully. We are talking about a coin that represents the exact moment when America changed its money forever, a coin that bridges the gap between the silver era and the clad era, a coin that carries the fingerprints of one of the most dramatic policy decisions in Treasury history, and a coin that exists in defiance of the very rules that were put in place during its creation. Every single one of those factors compounds upon the others, and the result is a coin whose value cannot be measured simply in terms of metal or condition or even rarity. Its value is historical. Its value is symbolic. Its value is the value of a moment in time that can never be recreated, never be replicated, never be manufactured or faked or approximated, a genuine physical artifact of the precise instant when American coinage crossed a threshold it has never crossed back. When numismatists talk about the 1965 Roosevelt dime, they do not simply talk about a coin. They talk about a witness to transformation, to crisis, to the kind of institutional decision-making that ripples forward through decades and centuries. And witnesses to history, true witnesses, authentic and irreplaceable, are worth whatever the market will bear. Now let's talk about condition, because $63 million does not attach itself to just any 1965 Roosevelt dime. It attaches to the finest known, to a specimen that has somehow survived 60 years of existence in a state so immaculate, so completely untouched by the passage of time, that it seems almost supernatural. Consider what a coin has to survive to reach gem uncirculated condition after 6 decades. It has to avoid circulation entirely, never spending a single day in commerce, never passing through a single hand that might leave behind the microscopic oils and acids of human skin, never bouncing against another coin in a pocket or purse or drawer. It has to be stored in conditions that protect it from humidity, from temperature fluctuation, from the atmospheric sulfur compounds that cause silver and copper nickel to tone and darken over time. It has to be handled, on the rare occasions when it is handled at all, with the kind of reverence and care that most people reserve for sacred objects. And then, after all of that, it has to be examined by the world's most rigorous professional grading services, subjected to scrutiny under powerful magnification by experts who have spent their entire careers learning to see what ordinary eyes cannot, and it has to emerge from that examination with a grade that places it among the very finest examples of its kind ever certified. That is an almost impossibly narrow path for any coin to walk. And yet, the finest known 1965 Roosevelt dime has walked it, and the result is a coin that, when it appears on the market, creates the kind of excitement that makes auction houses hold their breath. The auction history surrounding the finest examples of the 1965 Roosevelt dime reads like the plot of a financial thriller. Bids escalating in rapid, breathless increments, collectors and dealers watching from screens and phones around the world, the hammer coming down at numbers that send shockwaves through the numismatic community. There are collectors who have spent years, literal years, tracking the provenance of these coins, following them from collection to collection, from auction to auction, waiting for the moment when they might have the opportunity and the resources to make their move. There are stories of private sales conducted in complete secrecy, of coins changing hands for undisclosed sums between private collectors who prefer to keep their treasures out of the public eye entirely. The world of ultra-high-end numismatics operates at a level of intensity and passion that most people never see, and the 1965 Roosevelt dime sits at the very center of that world like a crown jewel. And perhaps most powerfully of all, this coin reminds us of something deeply, profoundly human. It reminds us that value is not always visible to the naked eye. It reminds us that history hides in the most unexpected places. It reminds us that the things we overlook, the things we dismiss, the things we spend without a second glance, sometimes carry within them stories and significance and worth that would take our breath away if only we knew where to look. The 1965 Roosevelt dime is out there. The 1988 P is out there. The 2005 D is out there. Somewhere in America, right now, there are coins sitting in jars and rolls and forgotten corners of old houses that carry stories worth millions. The only question is whether the person holding them will ever know. That is the magic of numismatics, and that is the promise of the Coin Lore Vault. We are here to make sure that when you hold a coin in your hand, you never ever underestimate what you might be holding. Thank you for staying until the very end. This has been the Coin Lore Vault, and we will see you in the next one.